Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar on export incentives under the FTP. To allow the participants to join in, we shall wait for another 4-5 minutes and we'll be starting our webinar at 3:05 p.m. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in that large number. Uh, Today, we are commencing a series of webinar on export incentives, and this is the first part of the series. We begin our session now. So before we start the session, we had certain background in mind, because of which we thought that we'll conduct this series. Uh, Today, the world is a global village where exports and imports, they form an inherent part of our economy. Traditionally, as a country, India has been a major oil importer, and it was incumbent on India to significantly harp on exports, not only to meet the foreign exchange requirements, but otherwise also to increase the scale of industrialization in the country. Initially, as a country, we focused on the exports of merchandise, namely the goods. And in last couple of decades, India has become a major service exporter as well. IT being the backbone of service exports of the country. Government encourages the exports through various fiscal and non-fiscal measures. The fiscal measures being export incentives, which we'll be discussing in this series. Non-fiscal measures means trade facilitation measures. And to that extent, the government has launched various programs like Make in India, ease of doing business, etc. for this perspective. With these objectives in mind, we felt that export incentives are very important for the manufacturing or service industry per se, and therefore we should have a webinar on this perspective. We are having some technical issues. We'll just request you to wait for a minute till we resolve them. Uh, my sincere apologies for this halt, and now we are back on the webinar. Before we come to this issue, there is one more important perspective we need to keep in mind, that all the developing countries like India, China, etc., today they are harping a lot on exports. And there is a perpetual dispute which these countries are having with WTO. The major issue which needs to be addressed is, are these export incentives like MEIS, SEIS, are these WTO compliant or not? In fact, United States of America have challenged these schemes before dispute settlement mechanism of WTO, and WTO is yet to take a decision on this. Repeatedly, the Commerce Ministry, the latest in January 2019, and prior to that in February 2018, they have issued repeated statements that they are working on various alternate export incentive schemes which will replace MEIS with certain WTO compliant schemes. So, pending this resolution between WTO and India, the present export incentive schemes continue as it is. So, in this webinar series, we'll be having 3 modules, and considering the length and breadth of the topics, we came to a conclusion that we cannot impart the knowledge on these topics properly unless we run a series. And that is why to provide both basic as well as pertinent issues relating to these export incentive schemes in a very organized way, we decided to conduct this series. In our experience, many of the exporters are still not fully aware of the type of incentives available to them, nuances around them. So in this series, in essence, we'll be covering the foreign trade policy, its interplay with GST, as well as the various refunds, benefits available under GST laws and procedures thereto. So today we are on module 1 of the series. In the module 1, we'll be covering the overview of foreign trade policy 2015-20, MEIS scheme and SEIS scheme. In the month of May, we'll be having a webinar on module 2, wherein we'll be covering advance authorization, including DFIS scheme, duty drawback scheme, as well as export refunds and procedures under GST. The last part of this series will be conducting on EPCG scheme, deemed exports, and various miscellaneous export procedures. Now, today's presentation we have divided into various parts. Firstly, we'll be giving an overview. Then we'll be discussing MEIS and SEIS scheme threadbare. Then the common provisions governing MEIS and SEIS scheme. And lastly, way forward relating to these schemes, what we suggest to all of you. So before we proceed further in the session, we will conduct a small poll, as you would have experienced in our earlier sessions also, that So the first poll question must be before your screen. Are you claiming MEIS, SEIS benefits provided under FTP 2015-20? And you have 30 seconds to respond to this question. And once we have the poll results in front of us, then we'll proceed further with the session. So most of the people have casted votes, and 71% of the participants have said yes. So they have been claiming MEIS and SEIS benefits. So we have a large chunk of the participants who are claiming these benefits and must be very well aware of the schemes, benefits, etc. With this, we proceed further with our session. So coming to the overview of foreign trade laws. So as far as export incentives are concerned, the mother legislation is FTDR Act, which is Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act, under which foreign trade policy has been framed, under which Handbook of Procedures has been created. So the FTDR Act develops and regulates foreign trade. As far as foreign trade policy is concerned, the last amendment took place in December 2017, more with the perspective of aligning it with the GST laws. The foreign trade policy governs exports and imports of goods and services. It incentivizes exports. The FTP is divided into 9 chapters. The first part is the general export-import provisions. Then we have multiple export incentive schemes. And lastly, we have special schemes like EOU, deemed exports, etc. As far as Handbook of Procedures is concerned, it basically lays down the procedures. Very important to note that as part of the regulatory mechanism, there is a policy relaxation committee in the DGFT. The PRC enjoys discretionary powers to relax various procedures wherever the exporters are facing difficulties in complying with the procedures, etc. They can approach the PRC. And finally, we have the DGFT, which is Director General of Foreign Trade, which is conferred with the powers for the delegated legislation to give effect to the purpose of the policy, as well as grievance redressal. Now coming straight to the topic, which is the MEIS scheme. So we'll launch our next poll question now. So the next poll question must be in front of your screen now. So the question is, are MEIS, SEIS benefits available in addition to other export benefits like drawback, advance authorization, EPCG, or not? So the question is, do you get these benefits independent of other export incentives, or there is some relation between these incentives and other incentives like drawback, EPCG, etc. So we still have participants polling in. We'll just wait for 30 seconds till everyone polls in. So we have the poll results now, and almost 80% of the people have voted. So the poll results are 84% of the people feel that yes, the MEIS and SEIS are additional benefits, whereas 16% feels no. So the majority answer is the right answer, but still, for the sake of 16% people, please note that these incentives are over and above advance authorization, duty drawback, and EPCG. So even if you're claiming those other benefits, you are entitled for MEIS benefits. Proceeding further, so coming to the basics, what is the eligibility for claiming MEIS scheme? So the prerequisite requirement is that there needs to be export of goods, and goods should be produced or manufactured in India. So what do we mean by export? Export means taking goods outside India. So as far as the scheme is concerned, it is talking about physical exports. Very important to note that the policy also has a definition of manufacture. What will be considered as manufacture? So the policy defines manufacture in the widest of the sense. It covers make, produce, fabricate, assemble, process, etc. It also includes processes like refrigeration, repacking, polishing, labeling, etc. So as far as the foreign trade policy is concerned, it covers natural forms of manufacture where you use an input and make altogether a different product. It also includes ancillary activities like packing, labeling, etc. So if a company imports certain materials, only undertake packing or labeling, yes, it will qualify as manufacture under foreign trade policy. But whether you will be entitled for MEIS benefit or not, we will see in the subsequent slides. As of now, all the goods exported and all the countries are eligible for this benefit. So initially when this scheme was launched, there were certain categories of products and there were certain categories of countries to which this benefit was available. The earlier shape and form of this benefit was a focused product scheme, focused market scheme, market link product scheme, etc. And at one point of time, the government merged all these schemes, and as of now, it is available to all goods which are exported to all the countries. There are very, very few goods which are ineligible for the benefit, which we'll be discussing subsequently. Generally, the rate of MEIS is 2% to 7%. Appendix 3B lists out in detail as to which product gets how much benefit. So the next question is how to compute the benefit. So the foreign trade policy provides that this benefit, like the percentage is already provided in the appendix. An exporter needs to see lower of realized FOB value of exports, means the actual bank realization for export of goods, or the FOB value of goods mentioned in the shipping bill. So whichever is lower. So the value in the shipping bill or the realization, whichever is the lower amount, that will be the base for computing MEIS benefit. At this juncture, it is important to note that each and every product which is taken outside India may not be eligible for MEIS benefit. Some example can be samples. You have a foreign customer, you supply goods from India on free of cost basis. So, but you don't realize any foreign exchange for that. Warranty. You supplied a large machine which had a warranty of 2 years. In 2 years, certain parts of the machine became defective. The foreign customer reached out to you. You supplied the replacement parts. So but you didn't realize any extra foreign exchange for the warranty parts. But yes, the initial machine which you supplied, you get benefit, MEIS benefit for the total value of the machine. Same case with the spares. You supply a large machine, some spares go along with the machine, you get MEIS benefit on the full value of machine. Another example can be as a matter of fact, the contract provided that you need to provide spares for 1 or 2 years. During those 1 or 2 years, you supplied spares on free of cost basis. So on those spares, you will not get any benefit, but yes, on the initial supply of the machine, you get any other free of cost exports. So the reason of mentioning these examples was that realization of foreign exchange is an essential requirement for getting the MEIS benefit. Now coming to the time limit. So the time limit is the later of 12 months from late export order date, means when the physical export has taken place, or 3 months from the date of, if you are generating EDI shipping bills, the date on which they are uploaded on DGFT server, or the printing or release of non-EDI shipping bills. The application form is prescribed as ANF 3A, which has to be filled for this purpose. Now, coming to some procedural aspects of it. So if an exporter is making exports through EDI ports, he has to make an online claim. In such cases, shipping bill and the bank realization certificate, which is in electronic form nowadays, are linked online. There is no need to submit any physical documents at all. And very important to note that in the shipping bill, there is a declaration which is for claiming MEIS benefit. So the exporter has to tick yes in the reward column of shipping bills. As far as non-EDI ports exports are concerned, the claim has to be filed manually. The exporter needs to file physical copy of shipping bills as well as the landing certificate. The copy of EBRC need not be submitted. For each port, a separate application needs to be filed. And the exporter needs to mandatorily declare that we intend to claim rewards under MEIS on the shipping bills. So one important point which comes is, and which we often come across, is that an exporter may not be aware that he had to make a tick yes on the electronic shipping bill, or he had to make a declaration for claiming MEIS benefit on the manual shipping bill, but he has not done it. So in a situation where the exporter has not done this, will it become an obstacle in claiming this benefit, or will it be treated as a procedural requirement only? So under laws, number of times the government, regulatory authorities, they impose different type of conditions. Some are substantive conditions, which are the essence, and some are procedural conditions. As far as substantive conditions are concerned, the courts have consistently held that there is no compromise to that. In the present context, the government is granting MEIS benefit in a situation where physical export of goods takes place. There is a foreign exchange realization in the country. So if there is an exporter which has exported the goods, which has realized the foreign exchange, but he committed an error in not making this declaration electronically or physically, in our view, that will not become an obstacle for claiming this benefit. Very important to highlight that the PRC's, policy relaxation committees, they dealt with similar cases number of times. So the exporters approached PRC that they forgot to make the declaration on the shipping bill and requested them to condone it and allow MEIS benefit. So the PRCs took a very strict view of the law, and they held that this benefit cannot be granted. Some of these matters went to the high courts, and high courts went by the substance of the law, and they held that even if these declarations have not been made, the export incentives of MEIS will be available. They prescribed certain conditions of taking like a no objection certificate from the customs to prove that the goods have physically been exported. So to sum up, yes, in future you should be mindful of making these declarations of MEIS, but for past, if you have not done it, that will not be a bar which will come in your way to claim MEIS benefits. Now coming to the ineligible categories. So there are certain type of supplies and there are certain type of goods which foreign trade policy prescribes that these are ineligible for MEIS benefit, like supply from DTA to SEZ, export of imported goods. So like in the earlier slides, I was discussing that even if you undertake packing, it will qualify as manufacture. But still from MEIS perspective, that is an ineligible category if you import the goods, just undertake packing and sell it as it is. SEZ or EOU making exports through DTA, those are ineligible. But there's a recent circular which clarifies that if the transaction is other way around, that if the DTA has manufactured the goods, but physically the goods are getting exported through SEZ, in those cases, MEIS benefit can be claimed. Export by FTWZ units are ineligible. Exports through transshipment, when goods come from a foreign country to India and transshipped to a vessel and goes to another country, in those cases benefit is not available. The goods which are subject to export duty are ineligible, and the goods which are subject to a minimum export price are ineligible. Certain categories of goods which have been made ineligible, these are cereals, sugar, milk and milk products, meat and meat products, leather products, jewelry, etc. So generally these products are ineligible. So unless some variants of these products have been specifically notified in the Appendix 3B, they are ineligible for the benefit. Now coming to a couple of case studies which happen day in, day out in the commercial world. There can be a situation where an Indian manufacturer bills a goods to a foreign party, but on the instruction of foreign party, he ships the goods to Indian party. So for example, ABC is a supplier located in Haryana. He gets an order from XYZ in US, but XYZ in US, he asks ABC that you deliver the goods in India to PQR. So in this case, the customer is located overseas, who for sure will be paying in the convertible foreign exchange, but the goods are not physically leaving the country. So the question is whether ABC will be entitled for MEIS benefit when he is realizing foreign exchange. The answer is no, because the goods are not moving outside the country. A reverse case can be the goods are billed to an Indian party, but on the directions of Indian party, the goods go to a foreign country. So taking same example further, ABC located in Haryana has a buyer XYZ in India, but the buyer XYZ says that you deliver the goods to US to his customer PQR, and XYZ acts in the capacity of a merchant exporter. So ABC raises the invoice to XYZ, which is an Indian party. XYZ raises an invoice on PQR, which is a foreign party. So the question is MEIS benefit available to ABC? Answer is no, because ABC is selling goods to an Indian party even though the goods are moving outside India. So the condition of receipt of foreign exchange is not satisfied in this case. But as far as XYZ is concerned, yes, it will be entitled for MEIS benefit because it earns foreign exchange, and XYZ is the ultimate seller of the export goods. Now coming to the SEIS scheme, and I hand over the session to Poonam, who will run through nitty-gritties of the SEIS scheme.
Thank you, Puneet. We shall now discuss the SEIS scheme in terms of eligibility, benefits, and the procedural aspects related specific to the SEIS scheme. As per Chapter 3, the benefits of SEIS are meant to be granted with the purpose of actually providing exporters rewards to offset infrastructural inefficiencies or associated costs. Specifically for the SEIS, the policy mentions that the scheme is meant to encourage and maximize exports of services from India. The eligibility criteria for SEIS scheme is for service providers who are located in India. One of the key distinctions between the SEIS scheme and under the earlier scheme, which was known as Serve from India scheme, is that the service providers earlier were qualified with the requirement that such a service provider must be an Indian service provider. So therefore, the controversy under the earlier SFIS scheme was whether the service providers who had origin from outside of India, specifically MNCs based out of the locations of foreign origin, are they entitled for SEIS benefits? That controversy actually has been put to rest under the new SEIS scheme, because now the eligibility criteria simply states that the service provider must be located in India, and therefore it need not qualify to be an Indian service provider per se. The services which are eligible for SEIS benefit are notified under Appendix 3D, and this appendix is aligned with the UN's Central Product Classification Code. And the benefit that another qualifying criteria for being eligible under the SEIS scheme is that there must be a minimum NFE earning of 15,000 in a year from rendering of services. Earlier, the policy provision was worded to say that the benefit is eligible in case the 15,000 limit is achieved in the previous year. This led to a controversy whether in the first year of service exports, whether a service provider is eligible for SEIS benefits. This point has now been settled by an amendment in the policy by making the provision to say that the $15,000 limit needs to be crossed within the same financial year. The benefit available under the SEIS scheme is equivalent to the NFE based on the net foreign exchange earned, and the applicable rates are till October 31st, 2017, 3% to 5%, and after 1st of November 2017, the rates stand modified between 5% to 7%. The benefits are, like I said, eligible to specified list of services, and therefore it's a positive list that's provided in law. So there are specific services which are entitled. Some of the illustrative lists are there on the slide before you. For example, accounting and bookkeeping services, market research services, management consulting services, and there are similarly several services which are listed as eligible services. There are some key services which are missing from this list of eligible services, namely IT and ITES services and telecom services. So one of the things that needs to be analyzed in terms of understanding the eligibility for SEIS scheme is whether the service being provided by a service exporter are specifically covered within the list of eligible services, and in that sense a classification analysis is required. Another important aspect of SEIS scheme is that only two modes of service provision are entitled for benefit under SEIS. The definition of service provider under the FTP actually provides for 4 modes of delivery of services. Mode 1 being where the service is provided from India to any other country. That's in common parlance referred to as cross-border trade. The examples could be a company in India is providing management consulting services to a client in US. Similarly, a banker is providing services from its branches or offices in India to clients in other countries. The second mode provided under the definition is where the service is provided from India to service consumers of any other country in India. In other words, this kind of mode is called where the consumption is abroad through foreign nationals when they come into India. The examples could be when tourists visit India and tourism services are provided to them and they make payment in foreign exchange. Similarly, when there are medical patients that come for treatment in India in Indian hospitals, these services will qualify under mode 2. These two modes, namely the cross-border trade and consumption abroad, are the only two modes that are entitled for SEIS benefits. The next two modes that we'll discuss, which is mode 3, service from India through a commercial presence in any other country. For example, if there is a Indian company that has a branch office outside of India and it provides services from such branch office to an overseas client, that is considered under mode 3 because here the services are being provided through commercial presence outside of India. This mode of delivery of service is not entitled for SEIS benefit. Couple of examples of this mode could be that a hotel chain provides services to customers outside of India and the hotel property is located outside India. Similarly, if a banker is providing a service through its overseas branch to clients outside of India. So these kinds of services, even though they earn foreign exchange, are not entitled for SEIS benefit. The fourth mode of service delivery could be that the service is provided from India through the presence of natural persons in any other country. The examples could be, let's say there are legal services which are provided by Indian lawyers, but for providing the services, the lawyers travel outside India to represent in foreign courts. Similarly, if there are on-site engineering services which are rendered by engineers traveling specifically outside of India on-site to render the services. In this mode, again, the benefit of SEIS is not entitled. Another important point for us to understand is that the definition of exports for FTP purposes and definition of exports of service under GST are not aligned. And therefore, there remains possibility that the benefit of an exported service is entitled to an exporter under the FTP, but not under the GST, or vice versa. The benefit of exports is not entitled under the FTP, but is entitled under GST. Or the third possibility also remains that the benefit is available under the SEIS scheme as well as for GST purposes. We'll see a few examples and understand this concept. So for example, an accounting bookkeeping service is specifically listed under the list of services which are entitled for SEIS benefits. And for GST purposes, this service qualifies to be an exported service as long as there is earning of foreign exchange and the recipient of services outside India. So under both SEIS scheme as well as for GST purposes, these services qualify for exports and the benefit is available. However, another example when we see of intermediary services, where an intermediary is supporting a foreign client for making sales in India. Such an intermediary does not qualify as an exporter of service for GST purposes because of application of place of supply rules. However, for SEIS benefit, due to specific inclusion within the SEIS list of category of services, the benefit of SEIS is eligible to intermediaries. So this is an example where GST benefit is not available on intermediary service, while SEIS benefit is available. Let's look at the example of on-site engineering services, which we discussed few minutes back, is a mode 4 service and therefore does not qualify to be entitled for exports under SEIS scheme. On the other hand, since this service is being performed outside India, it qualifies for export under GST. So this way we can see that there is no straight answer that once there is a service that qualifies to be export under GST, it would be entitled to SEIS benefit or vice versa. The next important concept that we need to talk about is the net foreign exchange earned. Like I mentioned, that the benefit of SEIS is available on the net foreign exchange earned, which is defined to mean the gross earnings from foreign exchange relating to the service sector minus the total expenses, payouts, remittance of foreign exchange relating to the to the service sector. So it's the net of the earning minus the expenses from the services that on which the rate eligible for SEIS is applied, and that's the benefit equivalent script that we get for SEIS purposes. To take an example, let's say I as a service provider earn $1 million for rendering my services in a year and spend 800,000 to render such services in foreign exchange. And let's say the benefit is available at the rate of 5%. The benefit of SEIS that would be entitled to me would be $1 million minus 800,000, which would be 200,000. 5% of that which is $10,000, is the benefit that would be allowed to me. There are certain services which are provided in the policy, which as per the RBI guidelines will still be treated as exports, even though the receipt of such services may be in INR. The examples are like air transport services. Another point that's interesting, specifically in respect of SEIS scheme, is that the payments through international credit cards and other instruments permitted by RBI in foreign exchange are considered as eligible foreign exchange receipts, and therefore SEIS benefit is available in such cases. So for example, if a foreign tourist stays in a hotel and makes payment for the services within in foreign exchange using his international credit card, that the hotel on such services will be entitled for SEIS benefit. One of the points that we mentioned when we discussed about the NFE concept was that the foreign exchange receipts and payouts relating to the service sector are to be considered to calculate NFE. So that leads to the question that, let's say a business has multiple profiles. It has services and manufacturing. As per the policy, if there are foreign exchange receipts and payouts for both types of profiles, then only the foreign exchange receipts and payouts relating to the service sector need to be considered to calculate NFE. Taking an example to explain this concept further, let's say a business has an R&D center and a manufacturing business, and it has foreign exchange receipts and payouts for both profiles. In this case, only the foreign exchange receipts and payouts with respect to R&D center will be considered for calculating NFE. The expenses and receipts of manufacturing sector will be ignored. In a similar example, if there are common expenses to both R&D center and manufacturing business, then the expenses need to be attributed to R&D center and manufacturing business, and the expenses that are attributable to the R&D center will be deducted from the NFE calculations. Now, couple of procedural aspects with respect to SEIS scheme. The time limit for filing the SEIS scheme is 12 months from the end of the financial year, and the application form needs to be filed in ANF 3B. With this, I hand over the session to my colleague Himanshu. The next few slides will be taken up now by Puneet. Thank you.
Thank you, Poonam. Now coming to some common provisions which are there in foreign trade policy for MEIS and SEIS schemes. The first and foremost thing is how these scripts can be utilized. As these schemes have been continuing since pre-GST regime, so the scripts can be used for BCD, CVD, and SAD applicable on import of inputs and capital goods. Now, except for very few products like petroleum products, etc., CVD and SAD is not applicable in generally. So the usage gets restricted to BCD only. So if an exporter has a MEIS script, it can use it for payment of BCD on its imported raw materials. It can be used for payment of central excise duty on domestic procurement of goods, whose utility is still very, very low. Importantly, the scripts can be used for payment of custom duties in case there is a default of fulfillment of export obligation. The script can also be used for payment of composition fee, application fee, etc. Importantly, these scripts cannot be used for payment of GST on goods or services. So presently, primarily these scripts can be used for payment of BCD on imported raw materials. Another important issue which has cropped up in the recent times is that, as most of you will be aware, that in 2018 the government has imposed SWC, which is Social Welfare Surcharge. SWC is levied at the rate of 10% of BCD. So if there is an importer of goods, he imports goods valuing 100 rupees. BCD rate is 10%. BCD works out to 10 rupees. SWC rate is 10% of BCD, which works out to 1 rupee. So in this example, let's see how the exporter can use the MEIS script for payment of import duties. As far as BCD of 10 rupees is concerned, yes, as we discussed in the previous slide, the MEIS script can be used for payment of BCD. Now the interesting question comes is for SWC. What happens for SWC? So the two questions which arise is that first, whether can the script be used for payment of SWC or not? Or the second, which is a larger question, do you actually need any MEIS script for payment of SWC? Now, SWC is similar to various type of cesses which government keeps on imposing. Like we used to have education cess, senior and higher education cess, etc. All these cesses and surcharges, they do not have any independent existence of their own. In other words, they are piggyback. They are tied to some parent tax, which can be a BCD, excise, service tax, etc., and are computed as a percentage of that. So in a situation, if the main tax itself is exempt, a logical corollary is that even the surcharge and cess will also be exempt. Very important to note that when the exporter has fulfilled all the conditions, he has got the MEIS script. Now the MEIS script has to be used for making imports. So if the script is used, in effect, there'll be no cash payment of duty. To that effect, there is a customs exemption notification which is needed for MEIS and SEIS. So the central government has issued notifications wherein MEIS and SEIS scripts can be used for import of goods. Importantly, as far as SWC is concerned, SWC does not find any mention in the notification. In fact, in our view, that mention was not required also for the reason of being piggyback. And a similar issue has come up in a variety of situations before the courts. So for an area-based exemption where the exemption was restricted to excise duty, it did not specifically mention education cess. The Supreme Court held that it need not have mentioned because it's piggyback. Therefore, if the notification only mentions the main excise duty, education cess will automatically be exempt. The very same issue came up in respect of DPP scripts which used to exist prior to MEIS. In case of DPP scripts also, the issue came up before tribunals and multiple high courts as to whether if the DPP import notification does not mention anything about education cess, will education cess be exempt? So the courts consistently took a view that education cess being a piggyback tax, there is no separate exemption which is needed. In fact, the court said that the exporter need not use his DPP script at all for payment of education cess. So in our view, the same logic, the same corollary applies here as well. In our view, just to answer the two questions which we posed and for clarity of everyone, once the BCD is exempt, SWC will be automatically exempt even if the MEIS, SEIS notification does not specifically state so. Second important point is that once BCD has been exempted and SWC has become zero. So to that extent, you should not be using your scripts for payment of SWC. So in this example, if the total import duties were 11 rupees, the MEIS scrip should be used to the extent of 10 rupees only. So we need to be careful that the authorities are not using our scripts to the extent of SWC, or they are not forcing us to pay this amount of tax in cash, because otherwise it will be an extra cost for our business. So if there is a factual situation where MEIS scrip is being used for payment of SWC, or these amounts are paid in cash, the exporter should litigate this matter and should claim refund from the authorities. Next important point is, which is a relatable point relating to SWC, is that for number of products, there are general or specific exemptions available. The general exemptions can be the tariff provides a rate of 10%, but the notification reduces to 5%. They can be specific exemptions like FTA, like the government has a free trade agreement with many countries, wherein if you import the goods, to that extent, the custom duty reduces. So taking an example for that as well, if the value of goods is 100, and let's say the BCD rate applicable on goods is 5 rupee, the FTA benefit is available, which reduces 10 to 5%. SWC on 5 rupees work out to 0.5. In this case, when the exporters are paying duty through scrips, they should pay only the effective rate of duty, which is 5% in this case, and not what is there in the tariff. So if any FTA or any other benefit is available, that should be claimed simultaneously with the utilization of scrip. And as discussed in the previous slide, that the exporters need not utilize their scripts for payment of SWC. Now, I'll hand over the session to my colleague Himanshu, who will take us through various other common provisions for MEIS and SEIS, which the exporters need to mandatorily adhere.
Thank you, Puneet. Before we proceed further to understand the common procedures for MEIS and SEIS, we have one more poll question before the audience. And in next few seconds, the question will be on your screen. And you will have 30 seconds to answer the question. So I'll read the question as well. The question is that, have you filed your MEIS SEIS claim for financial year 2016-17? So 75% of the audience have claimed the MEIS and SEIS claim for 16-17, and 25% audience is yet to claim such benefits. So before, so to proceed further, I would like to tell you that whether an assessee or an exporter can claim the benefit for such long period or not, or if they can claim whether the entire benefit is available to them or the benefit will get reduced to some percentage. So the answer to that is yes, the exporters can claim the benefit for the past 3 years, as earlier discussed, that that an exporter needs to file MEIS claim within 12 months from the let export order date, and similarly SEIS claim from the 12 months from the end of the financial year. So but an exporter can also claim benefits for the past year, which is prior to that period, but with a late cut of certain percentage. So if an exporter files 6 months from the date of application, then 2% on the eligible rate will be applicable. So suppose the 5% rate is applicable for this MEIS or SEIS benefit, and if you are claiming beyond 6 months with the normal period, then 2% late cut will be applicable, which is 0.1. So the effective rate would be 4.9. And if suppose you are filing an application after 6 months but within 1 year from the last date of application, then 5% rate will be applicable. Similarly, if you are filing an application after 1 year but within the 2 years from the date of the application date, then 10% will be applicable. 10% late cut will be applicable. So all these things will be, we can understand with the help of an example. So suppose you are claiming MEIS period. So your let export order date falls between April 27/18 to April 26/19. So suppose you are filing today. So for this 1 year, no late cut will be applicable, and you can claim the entire benefit of MEIS. Suppose the let export order date or the shipping bill date falls between October 27/17 to April 26/18, then 2% cut will be applicable on the rate. If the shipping bills falls between April 27/17 to October 26/17, then 5% late cut will be applicable on the normal rate. And the last would be if the shipping bills falls under this April 26/16 to 17, April 26/17, then 10% rate will be applicable. So with this, we can also understand that for the period 16 and 17, we can still claim the benefit with a late cut of 10%. Important to note that here is these MEIS claim is applicable on the shipping bill date wise. So suppose your shipping bill date is 23rd of April. So as on date, the same will not fall under the category. So it is important that you identify such cases and claim the MEIS benefit for the past 3 years, which falls within the time period. Similarly, an SEIS claim can be filed within 12 months from the end of the financial year. That is the normal period where no late cut will apply. So if you are filing an application for financial year 18/19, then no late cut will be applicable. 2% will be applicable if you file for the financial year 17/18 as on date, then 2% on the eligible rate. Suppose your rate is 5%, then 2% late cut will be there. So if you file it today, then no financial falls under this 5% category. The time period has lapsed. But if you are filing SEIS claim for the financial year 16/17 as on date, then 10% late cut will be applicable on the normal rate. Another aspect would be that to file MEIS and SEIS claim, the exporters must have RCMC certificate and IEC certificate. The exporters to have an active IEC certificate at the time of export of goods and export of services. Here, one thing to be noted, suppose a service provider who is exporting services and he is not having IEC as on date. So in our view, it is only a procedural lapse, and he can apply for IEC and claim the SEIS benefit for the past period as well. Similarly, the exporter needs to have RCMC certificate also at the time of filing an application. Both the IEC as well as the RCMC can be filed online on the DGFT portal. Second common procedure is that now the scripts are issued by the DGFT authorities in an electronic form. So earlier we used to have physical copy that much either we receive by post or we'll go to DGFT authorities to issue that script. But effective from April 10, 19, such scripts are now can be issued in only electronic form. So the exporter will receive either a mail confirmation or he can log into DGFT portal and can see the issuance of the script with a number. Third important thing is this supplementary claim for this MEIS and SEIS benefit. Whether an exporter can claim this the benefit on the amount received after the export of goods or services due to price revision. So suppose you are exporting goods at 100 rupees and goods have already been placed to the other country, and thereafter the price revised between the buyer and the seller, let's say for rupees 10. So in that case, you can only claim benefit only for the original invoice amount and not for the supplementary or the price revision amount. Fourth thing is that the validity and the revalidation of those scripts. Scripts are valid for 24 months from the date of issuance of the script, and those scripts cannot be revalidated. If a script is expired or you are not able to utilize it within 24 months from the date of issuance of script, then you cannot use the benefit of such script for the import of goods. Such scripts can be transferred. Those are freely transferable and can be sold in the open market. Important to note that now such scripts can only be sold on the online on the DGFT portal site. So the exporter needs to mention the name of the buyer on the portal itself, and there will be an online transfer of those scripts. Next is retention of documents. So for exporter of goods or services, exporter needs to retain documents for 3 years from the date of issuance of scripts, like shipping bills, EBRC, invoices, etc. One more thing is that splitting of scripts. So suppose you are claiming benefit of MEIS and the script amount is 16 lakh rupees. Then in that case, law has given you an option to split the scripts in multiple of 5 lakh. So in this case, you can have 3 scripts, 2 of 5 lakh rupees and third one is 6 lakh rupees. You cannot apply for scripts less than 5 lakh rupees. So next thing is the consequences of default. If you have used the script in a wrong manner, or you have issued the script in the wrong manner, then what will be the consequences an exporter needs to face? For that, MEIS and SEIS script is if you are the original holder of the script and you have utilized the script, then in that case you need to refund the amount that you have utilized in cash with an interest of 15%. Further, if you are the original holder and you have not utilized the script, then you need to surrender the script to the issuing authority. Suppose you have sold the script or you have bought the script from some other person and you are not the original holder, then in that case, if you have utilized the script, in that case you need to refund the amount again with an interest of 15%. And if you have not utilized the script, then you surrender the script to the authorities. The next thing is the GST implication on supply of scrip. If you have sold the scripts in the open market, then what procedure you need to follow? The taxability of the supply of scripts pre-October 13, 17, the applicable rate is was 5%. So if you have sold the script in the market till October 13, 17, then you need to pay GST at the rate of 5%. Post October 13, such scripts are such scripts attract nil rate, so you don't need to pay tax. From the ITC perspective, you are eligible to claim credit on inputs and input services. If you have availed services which are exclusive to MEIS and SEIS scripts, then you are not eligible to take credit post October 13, because the GST rate on sale of such script, on supply of such scripts, attracts nil rate. If you have availed input and input services which are common for the entire business, then proportionate credit will not be available to you. Common services would be audit, legal, security. On such services, you need to proportionately reverse the amount on the basis of the amount of turnover of scripts. From the documentation perspective, you need to raise a bill of supply document under GST if you are selling the script to a party. And the same needs to be reported in form GSTR1 and form GSTR3B as exempt outward supply. With this, I'll hand over the session to Puneet, and he will discuss the way forward for the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Himanshu. With this, we'll come to the last part of the session, which is a way forward. So our suggestion to all exporters will be that at first place, they must evaluate the eligibility of MEIS, SEIS benefits available. Sometimes, especially in multinational companies, we have seen that there may be cross charges from Indian entity to overseas entity for manpower supply, for business support, management consulting, etc., which can very well be claimed as an export of service for SEIS purpose, but it is not availed. So from that perspective, this evaluation is necessary, whether you are taking all the benefits or not. If you are eligible, then you need to collate all the documents to claim these benefits. As Himanshu explained in detail, that even for financial year 2016-17 onwards, you can claim these benefits. Even today, you have time for that. So if there are exporters who have missed this benefit, they can claim that. And last and very important point which we wish to highlight is that just as an exporter, you can sell scripts in the market. Same way you can buy the scripts as well. But number of times we have seen that there are frauds, etc., which are conducted. The scripts are forged, or they are incorrect, dubious, etc. So the person who is buying the scripts needs to apply his or her due diligence to ensure that the scripts are proper. And before taking question and answers, we again thank you for joining in that large number, and sincere apologies for some technical glitches in the session. And I hand over to Poonam. We have some interesting questions asked by the participants. So Poonam will address them.
Thank you, Puneet. We have a few questions that we'll be able to take before we close at 4:30 today. One of the questions that has been raised is with respect to the scripts which are still not utilized under the SFIS scheme. The SFI scripts were had the validated period only of 2 years, and since the scheme has expired for longer than 2 years, those scripts can no longer be used. We have a question from Mr. SP Chaitanya. His question is, do we get MEIS on spares supplied at price or not, and not FOC? The answer is yes, we do, since we qualify all the eligibility criteria in terms of physically exporting the goods, as well as receiving foreign exchange for the spares. In that case, a benefit of MEIS is eligible. The next question is from Mr. Bharat R. And the question is, are SEZ and STPI ineligible for claiming MEIS? The answer is no. The list of ineligible categories of transactions, which we displayed during the presentation, you would have noted did not specifically cover these transactions. And SEZ and EOUs, both categories of exporters, are entitled for MEIS benefit. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for joining us for today's session, and we look forward to your participation in our next session as well. Thank you very much.